Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be discussing a site that was excavated by MOLA in 2012 in the London Borough of Hackney at Worship Street, which revealed part of the Northern Roman Cemetery. A total of 56 burials were uncovered, of which 52 are inhumations and 4 cremations. Of these, 18 had associated ceramics either as container or accessory vessels. I'm going to go through the range of vessel types, although I will keep it typeful, associated with the burials, and these will be discussed in relation to contemporary cemetery groups in London. And aspects will include possible factors determining the choice of vessels, modification, and their reuse. I'm also going to look at the ceramic assemblages from the latest phase of burials and the ditches demarcating the later areas of the cemetery in regard to the dating and nature of activities on the site, especially in relation to an early 5th century coin hoard. So, setting the scene. First one, got that right. So, as discussed by Jenny Hall in her 1996 review of the cemeteries of Rome and London, there are 4 roughly defined areas known as the North, South, East and Western cemeteries. So these are situated outside the main boundaries of the cities of Londinium, including the settlement on the south bank. So you can see these here, so I could choose the pointer, and also further south, Southwark is there, it's just missing. So the site we're looking at today, which is here, actually extends the known boundaries of one of these cemeteries, that of the northern. The northern cemetery was the least excavated of the 4. However, recent excavations, including those at Spitalfields, Finsbury Circus and now Principal Place, have added considerably to our knowledge of the cemetery. As seen in the middle image, the site is bounded by the modern streets of Worship Street, Curtain Road and Bishopsgate, which becomes Shoreditch High Street. Can you see that? Actually, it's slightly bit faint, isn't it? So there's those 2 kind of excavated areas there. And also, just in relation, that's where Spitalfields is, obviously the much larger site that was published in 2020. Also, you will see that there's, in the 1860s to 1870, there was a large viaduct, a cutting and a tunnel by various rail companies, which destroyed removed all of the archaeology from that section. So what we have here is this part of the site is completely lost. And there you can see the site as it was would be having the Walbrook stream is conjectured here. And there you have the Ermine Street with various options of where exactly it would be. So in the early Roman period, the area is bounded by the Walbrook stream to the east and the Ermine Road to Lincoln, which was established by circa AD 50. The earliest Roman features on the site are the roadside ditches and quarry pits with pottery dating to the pre-Flavian period, such as a sugar-loaf quart ware mortarium with no grits and a shell-tempered bead-rimmed jar. So the first cemetery. Okay, so here you can see, whoops, daisy. Here you can see the 2 areas of the excavation. And what we're looking at is a place called Open Area 4. Can you see that's the cemetery? So it's actually in the southeast of the excavated area, nearest the road. All the burials in the Open Area 4 cemetery were bounded by structure 10 to the west and structure 17 to the north, both ditches. East-west aligned graves adjacent to structure 17 respected to the alignment. Of the 18 burials, 7 contained ceramic vessels. There is a paucity of dated pottery from the fills of the boundary ditches, but both contain sherds that could date to the period of 43 to 100. indicating that the layout was established by the 2nd century. The earliest burials, dating potentially to the later 1st century, based on the ceramic evidence, are clustered to the northeast of open area 4, just south of structure 17 ditch, and towards the projected road to the east. The later burials that date to the mid-2nd century in this part of the cemetery occur further away from the projected road. So I'm not going to go into any much details with these. As the cremation actually was one of the few that was actually a Goldwars amphora, which was the secondary container to the primary one, which was this black burnish ware 2 fine verted rim jar, which also had, we haven't got it here, it actually had a bead rimmed, round rimmed bowl on the top. And we also, what I'll come back to later is you can have, see this is an early Roman sand jar, and you've got this little post-firing notch deliberately put in the top, as well as this one also had in the girth groove. You can't see it, it's not been put on here. There was another post-firing hole here. And this verted rim jar was one of 5 vessels we had, which actually showed that they had been reused. They had patterns of sooting consistent with cooking, mostly on jars, but also on some of the black burnish type bowls. So we'll now move to the later cemeteries. So in the late 2nd century, the period 3 cemetery, open area 4, is reconfigured. As you can see on the slide, it's reconfigured as open area 8. And a further burial area, it's opened up to the north of the site. So here we have kind of burial 8, where you had open area 4, open area 8, where was open area 4. And then we also have a later northern cemetery opening up here. So structure 17 ditch was replaced by a new east-west ditch, structure 21, which was cut on a parallel line to its predecessor, although slightly further south. So moving quickly on, this is the open area 8 period 4 cemetery vessels. Within the southern area of the cemetery, 8 burials contain ceramic vessels. And one of the things I just want to note here is you'll see several, these are Thameside Kentware folded beakers. We've got actually two of those, and I'll be discussing those later. There's also this vessel was another one which had post-firing holes towards the base. So in open area 9, the northern late cemetery, within this area of the cemetery there were 3 burials containing ceramic vessels, including a pyre. And I will be kind of discussing the pyre vessels later, but these are all from that cremation. So the activity of the principal place cemetery covers a period from the late 1st century to the late 4th century AD. Although the sample of associated ceramics is small and deposited over a lengthy period of time, there are interesting observations to be made of the vessels selected and their condition, especially in comparison to pottery assemblages from other Roman cemeteries. Of the 33 vessels associated with the burials, closed forms are more common than open forms in open area 4 and open area 8, but equal in open area 9. Overall, jars and beakers are more common, although flagons are consistent in numbers in open area 4 and open area 8. It is noticeable that there's a wider range of vessel types used than, for example, at the Tenter Street in the East Cemetery. But this is partly explained by the chronological factors at Principal Place, as more early burials with associated ceramics. Flagons are absent, bar one example from burial groups at West Tenter Street, while at Principal Place there are 4 burials that contain flagons and accessory vessels, including burial 9 that contained 3 flagons dating to the later half of the 1st century. Flagons, as you will all know, are very common in London's domestic assemblages up to the end of the 2nd century, and then are comparatively rare in the 3rd and 4th century. So the occurrence in earlier burials and absence in later ones would to some extent be mirroring their common availability. However, the availability of ceramic types is only one factor in the numerous considerations that may have affected the choice of vessel for the buried, such as age, cultural affiliation, status, beliefs and religion. Recent excavations at the Southern Cemetery at Lance Street and Southwark Bridge Road by PCA, where burials dated to the 2nd and 4th centuries, have revealed the vessels associated with drinking, beakers and flagons, predominate, and that late Verulamium region whiteware flagons produced in the late 1st to early 2nd century are present in burials dating to the 4th century. The choice of these heirloom vessels is evidence of factors other than expediency in their selection. Use of heirloom vessels is also seen at the Eastern Cemetery and elsewhere in Northern Cemetery at Spitalfields. Whether these vessels have been curated by those involved in the burial of the deceased or are evidence of the recycling earlier burials is unclear. At Principal Place, one vessel, a London mica dusted fine variant ring-neck flagon, is potentially an heirloom vessel. Several forms from the same industries reoccur amongst the assemblage. Most noticeably, there are the Thameside ware, Kent ware indented beakers that are also apparent at West Tenter Street and at the Upper Walbrook Cemetery. As necked and inverted rim jars in the fabric are common choices in burials dating to the end of the 2nd and throughout the 3rd century, it is perhaps not surprising that the beakers from the same industry should also be selected. However, this is not seen in the largest collection of burial vessels from the Eastern Cemetery, where, although Thameside Kentware jars are common, there are no indented beakers in this fabric. Additionally, the presence of the Samian vessel found in Burial 8 at Principal Place is further evidence of Samian being used within burials in London, as summarised in Hall's review of the London cemeteries. Other recent examples of Samian accessory vessels from London include an East Gaulish dragon door form 33 cup from the Upper Walbrook Cemetery and a dragon door form 31R dish used the lid at the Atlantic House Cemetery. In contrast to this, there is the complete absence of Samian amongst the burial vessels in the East London Cemetery, and in the report it was concluded that this was potentially a result of the chronology of the burials, as many was dated to the 3rd century AD and post-dated the main period of importation of this ware. However, other large 3rd century cemeteries, such as those at Broome, have significant numbers of Samian vessels associated with burials. And London, as arguably one of the main ports for the importation of this ware into Britain, would have been in a favourable position to use these vessels if desired, as substantial amounts would still have been in circulation after importation ceased, as demonstrated by their regular appearance in contemporary domestic assemblages. The contrast between the utilisation of Samian vessels in the different areas of London cemeteries is of note and suggestive of factors apart from chronology informing these outcomes. Further synthetic analysis are required to explore these dissimilarities. There is, as I've mentioned before, there's a single example of a burial where the secondary container is an amphora. This is actually a burial practice quite common in London, and for the most recurrent type of secondary container at the Eastern Cemetery, and of those the most frequently occurring have been modified, as we have here, by the removal of the rim, neck and handles to allow the insertion of the primary vessel. Of those burials that have associated ceramics, either as cinerary urns or accessory vessels, 3 are associated with sub-adults and 13 with adults. Where sex has been determined, 3 of the adults are female and 6 are male. There are no clear patterns of association between the age or sex of the buried and the selected accessory and selected vessels, bar that of a child, burial 8, and a juvenile, burial 14, where the size of the vessel appears to be important. This has been noted elsewhere in London cemeteries such as West End Street, the Upper Walbrook and Spitalfields, where Angulterra is associated with 4 sub-adult burials. Elsewhere, the selection of smaller vessels for the burial of infants and children is also apparent, such as at Broome, where all examples of Samian dragon door form 33 cups accompanied the burials of young children. Although some of these vessels are genuine miniatures of standard forms such as cooking or storage jars, others appear to be selected as they are the smaller examples within a standard range of sizes, as is the case with those from Principal Place. So several of the vessels show signs of alteration post-firing, although the reasons for these modifications appear to be varied and in some cases unclear. I've already spoken about the Galwaz amphora. But reasons for other alterations to vessels are less easy to ascertain. There are post-firing holes or slot inserted into 3 of the vessels, and unfortunately we haven't got the holes on this one were kind of lower down. You can actually see those there. And this, which you can't see, was actually just above the girth there. This one is right at the top. The positions of the holes, either on the lower body or below the maximum girth, would have rendered the vessel unusable in regard to its original function. The latter, so this is the idea of possibly to kind of to kill or destroy the vessel prior to deposition. Alterations of this sort, especially in regard to flagons, are not uncommon in London and occur in boundary ditches and wells such as those at Swan Street and Southwark, and also cemeteries. And there you'll actually get examples from West End Street and also the East London cemeteries. In contrast to these 2 vessels at Principal Place, the single slot on the early Roman sand jar is above the shoulder. It's actually quite unusual, it's actually above the shoulder. And as this is the primary cremation urn, it is feasible that this was put in this position so as to be above the contents. Burial 55 contained the substantial remains of 3 Alice Holt Farnham vessels, 2 of which had been in close or immediate contact with extreme heat. To the extent, as you can see here, they were very warped and misshapen. Additionally, the position within the burial suggests that they may have been deposited whole in the pyre and their condition as a result of the cremation. The 3rd vessel is a miniature flanged bowl, and that's this one here. I mean, I say miniature, or is it just small? And actually, can you just see that there? There it is, in position. So it could, and this could potentially be a further pyre good. It's burnt, but it's not completely misshapen and crazed like these. There was also a further 44 sherds of unsourced sand-tempered wares were also found, but the vessels were just too burnt and small and fragmentary to identify. Sherds from a motto beaker, as we see here, were also present, and in contrast to all of the other material, they were unburnt but very fragmentary, and it is possible that only a fragment of this colourful and delicate vessel was placed into the pyre once it had cooled. Right, the late Roman pottery in period 4. The assemblages from the two late distinct areas of the cemetery, open area 8 to the south and open area 9 to the north, are compared to see if there's any difference within the overall ceramic assemblages from these areas, and if this can inform our understanding on the use of these two zones and the surrounding area to a principal place. There's a high sherd count for open area 9, which includes 123 sherds retrieved from wet sieving, and therefore, due to the bias this creates within the sherd quantification, comparisons are based on weight and eaves. So that's what I have here. Now, I remember this is not just the accessory, the burial vessels, but also sherds that were found in the backfill, etc., in these two different areas of the cemetery. Both cemeteries contain substantial amounts of Alice Holt Farnhamware, a fabric that appeared in London assemblages in the late 3rd century and becomes the most frequently occurring sourced reduced ware in the 4th. However, as you will see, from open area 8, the southern cemetery, there is an absence of Oxfordshire fabrics, Porchester ware D, and Roman late shell tempered ware within this assemblage. And these are later indicator fabrics that characterise later 4th century activity in the area. And apart from a hoard, which I'm going to come to in a minute, the coin evidence is very sparse, and most of the coins are dated from the 330s in open area 8. There's one coin which might be actually intrusive, which is dated to the 360s. However, in contrast to open area 9, where there are moderate amounts of late Roman indicators like the you've got poured, you've got the late shell tempered ware, that's calc, we just called it. I'm not going to go into that now. And also a mixture of the late Oxfordshire wares, plus also there are also late coins in this area, which are 388 to 402. So also the dating evidence from the ditches surrounding open area 8 are quite different in that they actually have late coins and actually much later fabrics in that area. So drawing to a close, although the cemeteries from open area 8 and open area 9 are potentially active at the same time, at least in the early 4th century, the dating evidence suggests that activity in open area 8 ceased around the mid-4th century, while activity in open area 9 continued. Within the open area 8 cemetery, a hoard of 19 gold coins and 114 silver coins were found. The latter dated within 355 to 402, but they were all clipped and worn. The gold coins were dated 364 to 92 and were very little worn. As discussed by Julian Boucher and his article in Lammas on this hoard, he puts their deposition possibly into the early 5th century due to the current understanding of the clipping phenomenon. So lastly, at the end, the late hoard in open area 8 is in stark contrast to the dating of the pottery within this land use, and is deposited some 50 years after the last burial, and also what seems to be activity in the area. The ceramic dating evidence suggests that this part of the cemetery was closed to burials, and crucially known as an area that is unlikely to be disturbed. If you can imagine, there was the stream and the road, and you'd have had possibly grave markers, and that this was seen by someone as a safe place to deposit this hoard right at the end of the Roman period. It's the end. Thank you.